The night sky above Earth looked calm, filled with stars that had burned for millions of years. To the people standing in their homes, streets, and cities, it was just another ordinary night. But far above the planet, hidden beyond the reach of normal sight, something new had entered the solar system. It was not a comet. It was not a natural object. It was a ship, larger than anything ever recorded, and it moved without sound, without signal, without warning. The scanners of Earth's defense network caught it first. A young technician, sitting in a cold monitoring station in Alaska, leaned closer to his screen. The numbers did not make sense. He checked again. The object was bigger than a moon, but it did not reflect light in the usual way. It was like the stars around it bent and disappeared whenever it moved. His voice shook as he reported the reading to his commander. Across the world, alarms began to rise. Military leaders received the signal at once, and messages flew between governments. Unidentified ship, entering solar system, unknown origin. The words repeated again and again, but they carried no comfort. Everyone knew this was not a lost ship or a simple explorer. The thing moving toward Earth had a presence that pressed against the mind, as if even from a distance it demanded fear. The Alliance had warned them years ago. They had spoken of a weapon, a single ship built not to fight battles but to end civilizations. Whole star systems had gone silent after its arrival. Fleets sent to stop it had never returned. Survivors were rare, and those who escaped told the same story. No sound, no warning, no mercy. The ship consumed everything. Now it was here. In the United Nations Security Hall, the leaders of Earth stared at the giant screen showing the dark object. It looked like a shadow in space. A floating fortress shaped like a dagger pointed directly at Earth. Scientists whispered that the material of its hull was not like any metal known. It absorbed light, swallowed radar signals, and moved with unnatural silence. Civilian news networks had not yet learned of it, but rumors spread quickly. Strange reports filled social media. Amateur astronomers claimed a new dark star was moving closer to Earth. Some said satellites were dying, shutting down one by one. GPS systems blinked off in certain areas. Power grids in Europe flickered. The presence of the ship was already changing the planet, and still it had not fired a single weapon. Above the Pacific Ocean, the Earth fleet gathered. Hundreds of ships, old and new, stood in orbit. They were not the most advanced compared to the Alliance, but they carried the pride of human resilience. Each crew knew the stories. They knew what had happened to the colonies that had faced this ship before. Yet they did not run. Earth was behind them. Families were behind them. There was nowhere else to go. In one of those ships, a young commander named Elias Hale stood on the bridge, watching the shadow grow larger on the screen. His officers waited for his words, but he stayed silent for a long moment. He had studied war his entire life, and never had he seen an enemy that moved like this. No signals, no threats, no demands, only silence, heavy and endless. As the ship crossed the orbit of Jupiter, it finally revealed a fragment of its power. Without changing direction, it passed near one of Jupiter's moons. In seconds, the moon cracked apart. Fragments scattered into space like dust. The crew on every human ship watched in horror as a world was destroyed without effort, without even the glow of a weapon. It was as if the ship's mere presence had broken stone. Fear gripped the fleets. Some whispered that Earth should surrender, though no one knew if surrender even mattered. The Alliance had begged before. Those worlds had still fallen. The silence of the enemy was louder than any declaration of war. On Earth, cities began preparing for impact. Bunkers filled with civilians. Families hugged one another in the dark, whispering prayers. People watched the sky, waiting for something they could not understand. Some hoped it would pass. Others felt in their hearts that this was the end. Commander Elias Hale finally spoke to his crew. His voice was steady, though his heart carried the same fear as theirs. This ship destroyed moons. It killed systems. But Earth is not like the others. We do not run. We do not bow. If this is the end, then we will meet it standing. His officers nodded, silent but determined. Around the fleet, other captains said the same. They did not know if humanity could win, but they knew one truth. If Earth fell without resistance, then there would be nothing left of what made them human. The shadow grew closer. First Saturn, then Mars. Each planet seemed to fade as the ship passed, as though light itself feared it. Satellites burned out as it approached. Space stations went dark. Every screen on Earth showed static for a brief moment, as if the ship had brushed against the world of technology itself. and then it came into view near the moon. For the first time, people on Earth could see it with their own eyes, a dark object hanging in the sky, blotting out stars. It was so large that even from the surface it looked like a moving mountain. Cities stopped in silence. Cars froze in the streets. Children pointed at the sky while parents pulled them inside. The silent arrival was no longer a story from faraway systems. It was here, above Earth, watching, waiting, and still, it had not spoken a single word. The shadow above Earth did not speak. It did not fire, yet its very presence was enough to bend the planet's rhythm into fear. Across the globe, every screen, every broadcast, every military channel was focused on one thing: the ship near the moon. In hidden bunkers and underground rooms, leaders of Earth argued. Some wanted to reach out with peace. Others said peace meant nothing to a thing that had already destroyed whole star systems. No message had ever been returned by this ship. No survivors spoke of mercy. Only silence, then destruction. The united human fleet received its orders: hold position in orbit and prepare to defend. Above the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of ships stood like fragile shields stretched thin across the black of space. They were ships built over decades, some new, some old, patched together from wars long past. They did not shine with the polished metal of Alliance vessels, but they carried something stronger: human will. On the flagship Resolute, Commander Elias Hale paced the bridge. His crew worked quietly, every hand shaking just slightly as they checked weapons and systems. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Marin, finally broke the silence. "Sir, reports from the Alliance say this ship cannot be stopped. Even their strongest fleets fell." Elias looked at her. His face was calm, but his eyes carried a storm. "Then we are not fighting as the Alliance did. We are fighting for Earth. That makes us different." The words spread through the bridge like a spark. Officers straightened in their seats. The fear was still there, but it was no longer crushing. On Earth below, civilians filled shelters. Families were separated as soldiers guided them underground. Children cried when they had to leave their pets, their homes, their skies. Yet even in the darkest basements, radios played a single message: Earth will not surrender. But the enemy moved. From the silent ship came smaller shapes, black as night, like shards broken from the main vessel. They spread across space, forming a circle around Earth. Drones, scouts, or weapons, it did not matter what they were. Their movement was enough to send a chill down every human spine. It felt like Earth was being caged. Ships of the fleet shifted position, weapons warming. The silence of the enemy pressed harder. It was like standing before a storm that had not yet broken. The air heavy, the sky dark. "Should we fire first?" one of Elias's officers asked. "No," he answered. "Not yet. Let them make the first move. We will see how they fight." Reports came from ground stations. Power grids flickered again. Communications were cut in South America. Ocean currents shifted strangely, as if pulled by an invisible hand. The enemy had not fired, but Earth itself was reacting to its presence. Scientists sent frantic warnings. The ship was not just powerful. It was bending the natural forces of the planet. The leaders of Earth sent one more message through every possible channel: "We are the people of Earth. We demand you state your purpose." No reply. The drones circled closer. Some passed through the human fleet, ignoring them, as though the ships were nothing more than insects in the way. Crew members shouted as systems blinked out for seconds before returning. Fear rose again, but Elias raised his voice across the fleet. "This is not the time for despair. Listen to me, all ships. You may think we are weak compared to this monster. You may think this is the end. But we are more than ships and guns. We are Earth. We are humanity. If this shadow wants to take our home, it must fight for every inch." His speech carried through channels, repeated across bridges, echoed in underground shelters. Civilians heard it too. For the first time, they lifted their heads. They were still afraid, but something new grew inside them: defiance. The fleet shifted again, forming a wall between Earth and the approaching ship. From the ground, people looked up at the night sky and saw bright points of light as human ships aligned. They whispered prayers for the soldiers, for the sons and daughters who floated above, holding back the storm. Then, for the first time, the enemy acted. A single pulse of light flashed from the massive ship. It was not a weapon as humans knew it. It was not a beam, not a missile. It was a ripple in space, silent and invisible, but when it struck, 3 human ships went dark. Their lights died, their engines silent. They drifted powerless like corpses in the void. Gasps filled command rooms across Earth. If one pulse could do this, how long before none of their ships remained? Elias clenched his fists. He felt the weight of his crew's eyes on him, waiting for orders. He wanted to scream, to rage, but instead he spoke with calm steel. Signal the fleet. Prepare weapons. If this ship believes it can silence us, let it hear us roar. We will not die quietly. All across orbit, ships armed their cannons, missiles locked on targets. The first real clash was about to begin, and on Earth, billions of people held their breath. The call to defend had been made. The shadow had tested its power. Now humanity would answer. The silence of space broke with fire. The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Dozens of ships fired railguns, plasma cannons, and missiles into the void. The night sky above Earth lit up as streaks of fire cut through darkness, racing toward the massive enemy ship that hovered beyond the moon. Civilians on Earth could see flashes of light, like falling stars in reverse, each one carrying the desperate hope of survival. The weapons struck. Explosions rippled across the black surface of the enemy ship. For a moment, the crews cheered. They thought they had done it, that maybe the legends were lies. But the celebration died quickly. The flames vanished, swallowed whole. The ship remained unmarked, untouched. It did not even shake. Direct hits, Elias's weapons officer said, his voice trembling. No effect, Elias gritted his teeth. He had expected this, but it was different to see it with his own eyes. The ship was not ignoring their attack. It was consuming it as if energy itself bent to its will. Then the enemy struck back. The massive vessel did not fire like humans did. There were no glowing barrels, no missile trails. Instead, a wave of pressure pulsed outward, invisible but unstoppable. It rolled through the fleet like a storm. Ships flickered, their systems crashing. One by one, lights went dark and vessels drifted powerless. Crews inside screamed as consoles sparked and oxygen leaked into the void. The fleet reeled. In the first minute of the battle, dozens of human ships were lost. Panic spread, voices shouting across the comms, shields collapsing. "We've lost control of navigation. They're tearing through us." Elias cut through the chaos. "Stay focused. Do not scatter. Hold formation." His voice was a steel anchor in the storm, pulling his officers back from despair. Around him, the bridge crew steadied themselves, hands moving fast over dying controls. The Resolute shook violently as the wave brushed against it, systems flickering in and out, but the ship held. And in that moment, Elias noticed something. When the pulse spread through space, the enemy ship slowed. Not by much, but just enough for his eyes to catch. Its movements near the moon seemed strained, like invisible forces resisted it. The realization struck him. Earth's magnetic field. "Mark this." Elias shouted. "They hesitate near the planet. The closer to Earth, the weaker they move." His crew exchanged stunned looks. Could the very planet they defended be the weapon they needed? But there was no time to test the theory. The enemy's smaller drones now swarmed forward. Dark, sharp shapes broke formation and dove into the human fleet. They did not fire weapons. They cut straight through ships, slicing hulls like knives through paper. Every collision left trails of fire as human vessels split apart. The battle became chaos. Human ships fought back desperately, targeting the drones with rapid-fire cannons and short-range missiles. Explosions scattered across the sky as some drones were destroyed, but for every one that fell, 10 more replaced it. On the bridge of the Resolute, Lieutenant Marin shouted over the roar of alarms. "We cannot hold them, sir. They're tearing us apart." Elias's jaw tightened. He looked at the collapsing fleet. Half the formation was gone. Civilians on Earth were watching. He could imagine their faces, eyes lifted to the sky, praying for hope. He raised his hand. "Signal every remaining ship. Fall back to low orbit. Pull them closer to Earth's shield." The order shocked some officers. Retreat meant exposing Earth directly, but Elias knew it was the only chance. If the enemy hesitated near Earth's natural defenses, then the fight had to be brought there. The fleet began moving. Engines burned as ships fell back toward the blue glow of the planet. Drones chased them, slamming into stragglers, but others turned their fire and fought desperately to slow the swarm. Every sacrifice bought precious seconds. From the ground, civilians watched streaks of fire rain across the night. Some thought Earth itself was burning. Others realized with horror that these were their protectors, their soldiers, falling like sparks into the ocean. As the fleet closed in near Earth, the enemy ship followed. It loomed over the moon, casting a shadow so vast that half the lunar surface vanished in its darkness. The sight froze the world. Never before had humanity seen an enemy this close, this unstoppable. On the Resolute, Elias stood tall, his eyes locked on the giant vessel. "They think silence will crush us," he said softly, almost to himself. But silence cannot break the human spirit. He ordered all ships to fire again. This time missiles and railguns launched directly from orbit, their trails burning against the backdrop of Earth's atmosphere. The enemy drones swarmed to intercept, but human fighters threw themselves into the path, colliding with drones to clear the way. The sky above Earth became a storm of light and fire. For the first time, the massive enemy ship faltered. The blasts near Earth's magnetic shield did not vanish completely. Instead, faint scars flickered across its surface, tiny but real. A murmur of hope spread through the fleet. "It can be hurt," Elias's voice thundered across comms. "You see it now. It is not untouchable. Fight harder. Make every shot count." The crews roared, firing with renewed fury. But the enemy was not finished. Its vast hull began to glow faintly, energy building like a storm cloud ready to break. For the first time, it revealed a weapon humans could see. A beam of dark light thicker than any river began forming at its center. It pointed directly at Earth. Billions watched from the surface, frozen in terror. The first clash was not the end. It was only the beginning. The sky above Earth burned with fire. The first clash had shown the truth. Humanity could wound the enemy, but only near the planet. Away from Earth's shield, their weapons were nothing. And now the vast ship above the moon was charging a weapon that looked powerful enough to end everything in one strike. On the Resolute, alarms screamed. The beam of dark light grew brighter, a river of energy twisting at the center of the enemy vessel. Its glow reached across the void, casting shadows on Earth's surface. Civilians looked up in terror, watching the sky turn black and strange. Lieutenant Marin's voice shook. "If that fires, it will burn through the planet." Elias did not answer right away. His jaw clenched, his eyes locked on the impossible weapon forming before them. His crew waited, fear pressing against their chests like a heavy weight. Finally he spoke. "Then we do not give it the chance." He ordered all surviving ships into a tight orbit, hugging Earth's magnetic shield. The enemy drones followed, diving into the atmosphere, setting the night sky ablaze with streaks of fire. Cities below could see burning trails as if stars themselves were falling. Some prayed, others screamed. But all of them knew this was the fight for their very existence. Elias called for the scientists on Earth. His voice was steady, but his words carried urgency. "Tell me what we can use. Every tool, every weapon, every force of nature. Earth is not just a home. It is a weapon if we are bold enough to see it." The line filled with frantic voices. Physicists, engineers, and strategists spoke over one another. They could not create a superweapon in minutes, but they could use what already existed. One idea rose above the rest. An electromagnetic pulse, not from a single device, but from the planet itself. If they linked Earth's satellites, power grids, and orbital stations into one synchronized strike, they could release a wave strong enough to shake even the strongest machine. "But it will destroy our own systems too," a scientist warned. "Communications, weapons, shields, everything could fall." Elias's reply was sharp. "If we do nothing, Earth falls anyway. Prepare it." The gamble began. On the ground, entire cities lost power as grids were rerouted into the plan. Massive storms over the oceans were redirected by weather control stations, feeding lightning into satellites. Old war satellites, long abandoned, were reactivated, their broken circuits patched for one last use. The entire planet became part of the weapon. The crew of the Resolute worked in silence, hands moving quickly over failing systems. Each officer knew this could be their last order, their last mission, their last breath. Yet not one of them stopped. Above them, the enemy's weapon pulsed louder, brighter. It was ready. The dark beam began to focus, aiming directly at the planet below. People on Earth saw the sky split with unnatural light. Some cried out. Others fell to their knees, waiting for the end. Elias's voice cut through the comms, reaching every ship. "Listen to me. You have seen what this ship can do. You know how many worlds it has already taken. But look below you now. That is Earth. That is our home. If we fall, then humanity ends here. But if we stand, if we strike together, then maybe, just maybe, Earth will live to see another sunrise. This is our last gamble. Stand with me. The response came not as words, but as action. Every surviving ship locked into position. Every satellite aligned. Every generator, every grid, every storm was tied into one pulse. The Earth itself seemed to hold its breath. On my mark, Elias said. His hand hovered over the command. The enemy's weapon flared brighter. Time was running out, now! The order shook the planet. From the Earth, a wave of energy exploded outward. It was not a single strike, but billions of signals fused together into one storm. Satellites burned, power grids died, lightning split the skies. The pulse ripped through orbit, washing over human ships, over the moon, and directly into the enemy vessel. For the first time, the silence broke. The massive ship shuddered. Its dark beam flickered and collapsed. Shields that had once seemed unbreakable sparked and cracked. On its black surface, scars of light opened like wounds. The monster had felt pain. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. On Earth, civilians in bunkers lifted their heads. Hope, fragile but real, returned, but the victory was not complete. The pulse had destroyed human systems too. Half the fleet's weapons went offline. Communications fell silent. Ships drifted helplessly in low orbit, their engines dead. The enemy ship groaned, its vast hull glowing with fury. And then, like a wounded beast, it turned its focus back on Earth. Elias gripped the edge of his console. He knew the truth. The pulse had weakened it, but not enough. The ship still lived. Its drones still swarmed. And if it fired again, Earth would not survive. He looked at his officers, at the weary faces of men and women who had followed him through every hopeless second. His voice was quiet but unshakable. Then we give everything. We are out of time. The last gamble had worked, but it was not the end. The final stand was still to come. The enemy ship still hung above Earth, scarred but alive. Its silent shadow stretched across the planet, swallowing the moon in its darkness. The electromagnetic pulse had weakened it, but not enough. The humans had struck with everything they had, and yet the monster still moved, preparing for one last blow. On the Resolute, smoke filled the bridge. Systems were offline, half the screens dark. Officers worked by the light of emergency lamps, their hands shaking as they tried to restore failing weapons. Lieutenant Marin turned to Elias, her face pale but determined. Sir, we cannot fire again. The pulse destroyed us too. Most ships are dead in orbit. We are out of time. Elias stared at the giant shadow outside. His heart was heavy, but his eyes burned with defiance. Then we use what we have left. If we cannot fight with weapons, we fight with ourselves. The enemy drones swarmed across the orbit, finishing the crippled ships. One by one, human vessels exploded in silence, their crews sacrificing themselves just to take down a single drone. From the ground, the night sky looked like a storm of falling stars. Civilians wept, knowing those sparks were their defenders burning in the dark. The enemy ship began to glow again. Its core pulsed like a heart of fire, charging the weapon that had already broken moons. The world below braced for impact. Bunkers shook as people whispered final prayers. Some refused to hide, choosing instead to stand outside, watching the sky, ready to face whatever came. On the Resolute, Elias gave his final order. His voice carried across every remaining channel, broken and filled with static, but still clear. All ships, listen. The pulse heard it. Earth's shield weakens it, but only one thing will finish it. We must strike the core directly. We must give everything. This is not just war anymore. This is survival. If we fall, humanity falls with us. So we do not fall. Not today. The order was madness. Ramming the enemy ship meant death. But the crews did not argue. They had already accepted their fate the moment they left Earth's surface. One by one, the surviving captains confirmed, "We stand with you, Resolute. For Earth. For our children." The fleet turned. Broken ships, battered and burning, aligned their courses straight toward the enemy's glowing core. Engines ignited one last time, carrying them on paths of fire. From Earth, billions watched as their fleet became a storm of shooting stars, rushing toward the monster above. They saw ships collide with drones, tearing open gaps in the swarm. They saw the enemy lash out with waves of energy, ripping apart vessels mid-flight. Yet still the humans pressed forward. Still they climbed through the storm. The Resolute led the charge. Elias stood tall at the front of the bridge, the glow of the enemy's core filling the screen. His officers stayed at their posts, no one leaving, no one hiding. Marin whispered, "Sir, if we do this, there is no return." Elias's voice was calm. "Then we will be remembered." The enemy's weapon neared completion, its dark beam swelling with power. But before it could fire, the first human ship struck. An old frigate, the Valiant, crashed straight into the hull, exploding in a burst of light. The scar it left was small, but the shockwave rippled across the monster's surface. Another ship followed. Then another. Each explosion carved deeper, each sacrifice breaking pieces of the unbreakable shadow. Finally, the Resolute reached the core. The bridge shook violently as enemy fire ripped through its hull. Alarms screamed, consoles burst into flame, but the ship held together long enough for Elias to give his last command. "Engage the drive. Take us straight into the heart." The Resolute's engines roared. The ship became a spear of light, racing into the glowing core of the enemy vessel. In that final moment, Elias closed his eyes. He did not see death. He saw Earth. The oceans, the forests, the cities, the children laughing under sunlight. The home he swore to protect, and then the sky exploded. From Earth's surface, people saw it. A flash brighter than the sun lit up the night. The enemy ship cracked apart, its silence broken at last by the roar of its own destruction. Its massive body split into fragments, each piece burning as it fell into the void. The drones collapsed lifeless, their connection severed. The monster was gone, the fleet was gone too. Only a handful of human ships, crippled and powerless, drifted in orbit. The Resolute and its commander were no more. But Earth still turned blue and alive. Civilians poured out of bunkers, staring at the sky with disbelief. The shadow had vanished. The stars were visible again. For the first time in weeks, people cried not in fear but in relief. In the silence that followed, the truth spread across the Alliance. Earth had done what no other world could. The most dangerous ship in the galaxy was destroyed, not by advanced technology, not by overwhelming power, but by human defiance and sacrifice. And though the fleets were broken, and the losses were heavy, a new legend was born. Earth had stood against the shadow. Earth had survived.